Hello and welcome back to our Let's Talk version. Today we are going to talk about careers. How do you choose your careers? What are they, etc. We're going to talk about it in a minute. But we are joined here by Dan. Hey there, Dan. How's it going?
I am doing fine, buddy. Life here is great, but I'm pretty darn sure that you just woke up because you sound like you literally just woke up and had a huge nightmare.
No, I didn't sleep much last night. And I woke up
Okay.
like
So
45
probably you
minutes
were
ago.
very busy the night before, and I'm guessing this was after work, which means work is pretty good. Career is fantastic. I love it, man. It's
Yeah.
great. We got to be busy with something.
Yep, totally. I agree with you. And
That's right.
yeah, so I basically had, I don't know, 4 hours of sleep anyhow. We got to do,
Well, first of
we got
all,
to
I
hustle.
think it's a good thing because, we are young right now,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to be a hustler, man. Like
Yeah,
the
true.
top entrepreneurs, they work up to 16 hours a day. So that these, one-nighters and whatnot, they happen a lot. So it's quite normal among all
Oh yeah,
entrepreneurs.
and you always get to correct that in a later date. Sorry,
That's right.
have a extra sleep, a couple of more sleep later in the day or something. Yeah, it's all good.
That's great. That's great. I like it.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah, totally. And also, so career paths. Actually, this topic came to my mind a few days ago because in a span of a couple of days, two friends of mine actually were talking to me about career paths, the fact that they're not sure about their career paths and they feel they're doubting themselves, etc. And I was like, oh, this is actually an interesting topic to talk about because I personally know that I experienced it, and I, for a fact, know most people that I at least am in contact with have had these kind of doubts or the states of not knowing at one degree or the other in their lives. So I was like, why not actually talk about this? And so initially, my question would be basically, so when we were very young, when we were in high school, we probably start thinking about career paths, probably even before that. But then as we grow, we think much more seriously and we think about every single angle ramifications. Some of us come to a conclusion very early on and start our careers. But I want to start with those of us who don't. We are in the state of doubts in the beginning, maybe even after we choose our degree to go to university, or not even go to university, start our business, or whatever the state is. We're not. Some people are not quite sure what they want to do. So, what do you think about this matter, and how do you think these people should tackle the problem?
Before I answer this question, first of all, let me ask you one quick question. When you were a baby, like literally before the age of 12, because we all had these dreams of finding a job and whatnot. We said a lot of things. Do you remember what kind of job you wanted to have when you were 12, 11, 10, around that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly if I was that age, but when I was really young, anyways, a couple of years here and there, I had actually multiple. One of them was, acting, and the other one was becoming a doctor, which none of them happened today.
Oh my goodness, I cannot. Because usually at that age, I remember myself. I was always say like a police officer, a pilot. I don't know, like a
Right.
firefighter. I was like on fire at that time, basically. So when we are children, usually we don't have a great idea of what our capabilities and capacities are,
True.
and because of this, it becomes a lot harder to actually choose where we want to go in life later on. So it's quite normal to just stick to stereotypes. Okay, things
Mm-hmm.
like firefighters, police officers, that kind of stuff. Now, that's basically quite interesting that you want to be a doctor at that a young age, and I have no idea why. That's pretty
Well,
cool. But
I saw a
overall,
lot of doctors in my surrounding. That could be possibly why, and I don't know.
interesting, pretty nice. So let me go back to the question here.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, please understand that the majority of people that I know, especially when they're below the age of 30, have this problem. That is, they are not quite sure of what they want to do with their lives and where they want to go in life, what kind of careers they want to have. So first and foremost, anyone who is currently struggling with this problem should understand that this is completely normal. There are very few of us who understand our true calling at a very young age. And oftentimes those become, quite geniuses in their field. But for most of us, we're going to have to actually discover that talent along the way. So that's number one, because part of what makes this whole process of discovering the right career and the right path for ourselves is that feeling of angst and like, oh my goodness, why is it that I don't know what I want? So by knowing that that's completely normal and
Mm-hmm.
completely natural to not know what you want to do with your life, this itself can prepare you in order to somehow make the right decisions along the way, and to give you the patience necessary to find out what you're really good at. So I mentioned patience because that's very important, because ultimately I really believe that it takes time and effort. You're going to try a lot of different things until you find out who you are and what you want. One of my most favorite authors and mentors, Mr. Robert Greene, he literally have tried perhaps over maybe 100 or so odd jobs before he finally discovered that, yep, I want to be an author at the age of, I don't know, perhaps after 30 or 40 or something. So the fact of the matter is, many people around the world are currently struggling with this issue of discovering who they are and what they want. So that's quite normal. That's number one. Number two, I really believe that people should not somehow, especially at an early age, concern themselves so much with finding the right career. Instead, to focus more on developing their talents and finding their talents and then using them in as much and as many ways as possible in their current careers. So this whole problem, because, we talk a lot about perfectionism and how it stifles progress, because ultimately when you're a perfectionist, you just don't take any action.
Right.
So I myself, I'm a huge fan of just getting started with something. So here's my perspective. It's a little bit, not, let's just say, commonplace, but it really works. I really believe that until the age of 30, it really fucking doesn't matter if you know what kind of career you like. All you got to do is to try to use your talents in whatever job you find yourself in. If you're right now flipping hamburgers in McDonald's, and if you feel like you have this knack for acting and for communications, then if I were you, I would literally use that ability to communicate well with all the clients who are coming in to buy their hamburgers, whether you're an Uber driver, whatever you are. So first and foremost, this whole I don't know what my career is, typically, from my perspective, is just an excuse for not working hard. Because let's be honest, we do this to ourselves all the time. We literally we sit down and think, oh my gosh, what should I do with my life? What's going on? Oops, half a day passed by. Guess what? I'm just going to go play some Call of Duty then, I guess. Forget about it. So people are going to just get involved with these useless ruminations about what they want to do and what not. So here's my personal advice to people who are currently not sure of what career path they should take. Now, there are certain career paths that they are already in the middle of, and they're long-term pursuits. Let's say if you're in medical school right now, you already have 7 years ahead of you. So it's kind of hard. But I really believe that it's not so important, from my perspective. It's not so important to make the right decision in terms of career until the age of 30. That is, whatever job you find yourself in, whether your parents forced you to go to law school, I don't know, maybe you're now in the, let's say you're an Uber driver, you do sidekicks, I don't know, you're perhaps a musician or whatever, you do stuff on YouTube. So I really believe that, first and foremost, do not concern yourself with finding the right career at first. Instead, focus on finding your talents and then using those talents in as many ways as you can in your current job, whatever it is. Let's say you're delivering newspapers. Let's say you're a paper boy. Let's say, I don't know, let's say you're working as a bodyguard in some place. Whichever job you find yourself in, there's always an opportunity to use your talent in that job
even
to
sometimes
work on it.
Even sometimes beyond the jobs, you for example, you mentioned like you'd like to be an actor. In your interactions with people, it doesn't have to be your job. You can use those, you can test out your skills, right? So it doesn't have to, but then your jobs definitely is a very good way to, go about it for sure.
It really doesn't, because ultimately it's the talent that matters, dude. It's all about the talent. And more importantly, not just discovering them, but actually developing them. And that takes a long amount of time, man. It takes a long time. Based upon my estimations, it takes about 7 years to get good at anything. Like anything you want. Let's say you have a huge talent for acting, huge talent for music, huge talent, I don't know, as a business person and as an entrepreneur. Let's say you're such a mathematical genius. It takes 7 years on average. So whatever job you find yourself in, if you feel like you have this huge drive for mathematics and now you're flipping burgers in McDonald's, then try to use that math skill in McDonald's to make things more efficient. So because of this, I really believe that people are just, it's really overhyped, this whole like, oh, I don't know, man. What is my real calling in life? I just don't know what it is. I really believe that when people say this BS, I don't know, and engage in such a way of thinking, all they're saying is, dude, I'm just so friggin' lazy and I just prefer to nag and just not do anything special. So I believe that from my perspective, based on my personal experience, by the way, for the
Mm-hmm.
first 10 years, the first decade of your professional life, whether it begins by selling newspapers on the street, whether it begins by, going up literally walking into your dad's corporate office and becoming the vice president, it doesn't matter. The first 10 years of your career, you're not supposed to concern yourself with the career or the job, because ultimately the career and the job is a vehicle that allows you to utilize your talents and then serve the marketplace to be compensated by basically money and other forms of benefits. So ultimately, what matters the most is that talent, is that skill that can be developed in almost any job. So because of this, I really believe that people are just making this extremely basically exaggerated. This is not that difficult. You can literally find out what your talents are in any. Let's say you're a bodyguard and then you're sitting in your, let's say, booth somewhere, and then you start drawing very nice sketches. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of know, dude, I have some talent in design, right? So that's number two. That is, whatever career you find yourself in, do not concern yourself with the job or with the career. Instead, discover your talents and then try to use those talents in your job, whatever it might be, in order to develop them.
Mm-hmm.
For many years, perhaps you need to do that. And then there comes a third stage. And the third stage is when you develop those talents. And then, now that your talents are developed, you can actually use them in whatever career you want. And then you ask yourself, all right, these talents that I have right now are very well developed. Which careers will make maximum usage of this talent? So if you're a bodyguard sitting in a booth all day long, you cannot really use your artistic talent to the best. You're not paid for it. You're not compensated for it. So in that condition, now that you've fully developed, you've literally spent 7 years in your booth watching, the people walking in and out of the garage and then doing these drawings and sketches. Now that you have good talent, because guys, this is very important. Marketplace only pays top dollars for top skill. That's very important. Doesn't matter if you have the talent for it. If somebody else has a talent and more experience, he will get the project, not you. So now that you've developed your talent, now you ask yourself, all right, after 7 years of being in this darn booth as a bodyguard, I now know these 2 or 3 or 5 are my skills. Now, which career paths will allow me to utilize these skills to the maximum? And now you can actually quit your job, either start your business or follow that career path that will allow you to utilize your skills. In the meantime, you have not wasted your time. You probably made a lot of, basically, perhaps you made some money as well along the way, because you were not just sitting in your room and thinking, oh, dude, I don't know what my talent is, and then smoke marijuana. Yeah, I got to find out. So you actually literally spend all this time working, serving the society, being a useful member of the society,
Mm-hmm.
albeit not in a position that really suited you at first, but at least you were useful. And this ultimately gives you social experience, because part of being good at any career is to develop our characters. And almost any job allows us to develop our characters. And
Mm-hmm.
at that case, once you've already become a more mature person, you know what your talents are, you've actually worked on them a little bit, you perhaps use them either directly in your job, or let's say you are a bodyguard and in a garage somewhere, and your talent is singing. And you're not allowed to sing because it's going to disrupt the dog next door. So
Right.
in that case, you do your singing when you go home or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether at work or as a hobby alongside your work, for many years, you work on your talent. And once the talents are well developed, now it's time to simply cut the head of the old job, start a new job, make your own business, or find a new path, because now you can actually get things done.
Right. Of course, I mean, nowadays there are so many career paths, so many options that also it plays a role for it to become sometimes very confusing for people, and they get lost in it. Like, let me give you a simple example. Sometimes when I go to grocery store and I see like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 types of strawberries, I'm like, which one do I have to fucking pick? Sometimes you just gotta, what I do is just I go with one of them randomly, or if there's a
I had
huge,
no idea we had 3 types of strawberries, by the way.
I'm just saying,
Pretty good
like,
one. I like it.
they look different. Not the types are actually different, but then they
Okay.
look and seem different. Probably taste different. I guess they do. What I'm trying to say, sometimes having so many options, so many choices, it's a problem on its own. But like any other problem, it's a problem, and it definitely has at least one solution, probably much more. And
Exactly.
and as you mentioned, obviously not doing anything about it is not probably the best solution because, well, you're not doing anything about it. But then my point is, I want to um, illustrate that I understand what people go through. I mean, I've gone through it. Perhaps I'm still going through it until I'll know for sure. I can't tell really. Um, but at the end of the day, I think it's important to, as you mentioned, try it out because, like those drawings in the booth for the bodyguard or singing after hours for the bodyguard, also helps him to make sure that he actually is good at it and it's not just a figment of his imagination, thinking his,
Exactly.
yeah, and at the end, and also, there's also another thing that's the social pressure of these things. I feel like sometimes we are so pressed that we think if we don't decide right away, we are losing time. We have to basically, the other guy already got a job and he's married too or something like that. So I think it becomes a competition state for some people, thinking, okay, if I don't do this, I'm falling behind, sort of thing. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's a valid?
You see, it's so true, man. They say if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. You see, here's the
Right.
fun part, man. The busier you are, the more you can get done. You know why? Because you get momentum. The same thing happens to finding a job. That's why I'm so strictly against this whole philosophical thinking of, oh, what is my real talent in life? Let
Mm.
us just think for friggin' 2 months or something. Ultimately, once you get started with any job, whatever, guys, I'm serious right now. It doesn't really matter. Once you just get started with any job, you gain momentum, and this momentum boosts your state. We talked a lot about state before
Hmm.
in the topic of body language. I mean, think of the emotional impact on your nervous system when you're just depressed in your room, thinking what's your talent in life, versus being active in the society after certain tasks. So number one, that'll substantially boost the way you use your body because now you're actually active. This will boost your emotional and nervous system. And more importantly, this gives you experience. This allows you to see things, to go to the society. What is people doing right now? You meet new people. You hear new stories. You're active. You're involved, and this actually allows you to be able to make better decisions along the way. So just get busy with any job. Literally, just go right now, open the goddamn ads, and find a job right now, whatever it is. If you don't have it, just become an Uber driver, whatever it is. Just get started,
Hmm.
and then in the process of being socialized, because a lot of the youngsters, especially the youngsters these days, are not, man, they're not socialized, dude. They spend all their friggin' time on their cell phone texting and stuff like that on social media. So
Hmm.
they're not socialized. They can't even friggin' talk properly to people. So
Right.
they need to first get socialized, meet people face to face, and this will allow them to actually discover their talent later on as they're busy and engaged with their current job. That's much better. The same thing applies to entrepreneurs. The best entrepreneurs usually started their business as a hobby on the side of their current
Mm.
career. They did not quit
Very
their
true.
jobs.
Yep.
People who quit their jobs to start an entrepreneurial business usually fail because they are cutting themselves off of time, valuable time. As we know in entrepreneurship, you need a lot of time to, somehow finally get off the ground. So if you're, let's say you want to be an entrepreneur, you start a hobby on the side and you are currently having your job. So you can literally keep this up for years and years without needing any income. But let's say you quit your job and you want to start an entrepreneurial venture by yourself. Dude, you only get cash for 1 year. After that, if there's no profit, then you'll give up and go back get a job. So the same thing applies to finding a job. Just get busy trying to do something, being a productive member of the society. And in the process, you will have the time to think about your talents and skills. And trust me, if you commit yourself to excellence in anything, you will get at everything. Because this is one of the quotes by Grant Cardone. He says, it doesn't matter if you like your job at first, try to commit to being the best, even if you hate your job. Because
Very true.
ultimately, it's that commitment to excellence that truly allow you to later discover and develop your talents. So I'm not saying you should spend your entire life on a career you don't like. That's the worst usage of your time because we're going to spend a tremendous amount of our time on basically at work. So you want to find your talents, but my experience tells me most of us we're not going to find it just when we're 20s or 20 in our 20s or something. So it will take some time, and because of that, just get busy, discover your talents, and avoid this whole trap of paralysis by analysis. This literally paralyzes us both mentally and emotionally, to find out who we are. Dude, just get started, get going. You will find the answer along the way. And of course, since we talked about perfectionism, understand that here failure is okay. You can make mistakes. It's okay to waste a couple of years in the wrong career, make some mistakes, lose some money. These are all okay. They actually will allow you to discover who you are basically later on, and you can make much better decisions down the road.
Right. A couple of minutes ago, you mentioned something about the momentum and how important that is. Of course, I know what you mean, but can you elaborate for a little on that, what it is? And
This is actually because I know you're an expert in physics and mathematics. You see,
right.
an object in motion tends to stay in motion. And an
True.
object that is stationary tends to stay stationary, right? This is a basic Newtonian law, basically, right? So
Hmm.
the same thing applies to basically our lives. When we are in a state of motion, that
Hmm.
is, we are going out, we get up early, we go to work, then we stay at let's say at a workplace, whether it's a McDonald's. I'm not just saying corporate, let's say Fortune 500 company right away. Any job, this gives you the right psychological habits, because
Hmm.
ultimately you need to develop those habits to become successful later in life. Now, what if you don't spend that time? Then you will acquire the wrong habits. You probably sleep late every single day. You won't go out very often. You spend a lot of your time on social media. You're probably going to get depressed seeing all these people who show how happy their lives are on social media when in fact it's simply not true. So you literally have all these problems and you just have no momentum. And the chances are you will remain in that fucked up state for a very, very long time. And eventually when depression kicks in.
Hmm.
So you want to get busy. You want to get going, whatever it is, and then think along the way. I'm a fan of thinking while acting. I do
Hmm.
not like to be like a philosopher sitting on the Mount Olympus and say, so where does all of this come from? Like, I don't want to like do that kind of stuff. I want to get busy. I want to get going and then think along the way, because that gives you momentum. You have this habit of waking up early and going to work. Now, if you want to have a side career, you do have the right lifestyle that can actually allow you to have that hobby along the way. So you can find some extra time here and there. So you want to get momentum by getting busy with any job that is available, while simultaneously focusing on discovering your talents. And then gradually, as years go by, you want to step away from this old job and find a new means of truly utilizing your talents in order to actually make great business or have a great career. And usually in that case, people who do this, they are rewarded very well because their talents are well developed, and the marketplace really rewards such individuals because now they are quite valuable to the marketplace.
Very true, very true. It's I mean, I think we all had these kind of moments of experience, if not permanent, that we basically had a good start to the day. We were super busy, but then we were pulling it off. Everything we would touch would become gold somehow. And I think that is basically this state that you want to always be in, sort of the keeping the momentum up like that. But then you have to understand that sometimes, because there are like, you go to sleep, you forget your previous day, and then the next day is a new day and you don't have that momentum perhaps, and then you're like, oh, yesterday was so good, I've got so much done. What happens? So sometimes you need that extra push to get yourself back on the track of that momentum. And also you mentioned something people talk about often, not everybody, of course, but then some do, about the true calling. Do we even have a perfect job for a person? Like, there's just one job for that person that is.
First of all, let me just this word perfect. I literally despise the word perfect so much. Like, there ain't no perfect shit in this world. Understand this. There's nothing
Of
that is
course, it's
called
not absolute.
perfect.
Yeah.
But I do believe in calling. I do believe in inherent talents because this is proven scientifically. It's observed in scientific researches among youngsters who are born. And I do believe that we are all born with certain talents that are above average.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's like this. I mean, I have literally seen, fortunately in my career, I have the chance of seeing people from all around the world, from all walks of life. And eventually you get the patterns. Like, you see that this guy really seems kind of like a dummy when he talks in a foreign language, but this guy is a musical genius, for example. Or this
Right.
guy cannot really sell well, but dude, can this guy organize everything? So ultimately, we all have certain talents. It's genetic in nature. We cannot do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in the fact that there are things such as genetic talents. However, those talents oftentimes need to be developed in order to become very useful. So you may say, well, okay, how do I discover what my talents are? Very simple. In order to discover your talents, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions right now. You can literally ask yourself these questions, and then you will kind of get what these talents are. Because sometimes,
can we play it out? Can we play it out in like a couple of those questions?
For sure. And the thing is this. Here's the fun part. Sometimes people think they have talents, but they don't. It's a mere delusion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they don't think they have a particular talent, but they're really good, damn good at it. So because of this, I really believe that in this particular case, we need the mirror of the society to help us. That is, we are not good judge. We're not good at judging what our talents really are. From my perspective, we need the feedback of other people to make sure that our judgments are not opinionated and they're actually real and unbiased. So the first question that anybody should ask him or herself.
Before I actually ask you that question,
sure.
You mentioned sometimes the mirror of other people in these cases are actually necessary. Are these?
That's right.
Does this matter for that person to be neutral? So being your friend helps or not doesn't help? So not knowing you is better, or knowing you?
Well, again,
knowing you to some degree, of course.
Just like opinions, it must come from multiple people. You see, I really believe that maybe your mommy believes that you are the world's best violinist, okay? But maybe in reality, people just run away from you, right? So I really, just like a survey, I like to approach this whole concept scientifically. We have this thing called the scientific method, right? We don't just observe one person. We have a group of people. We have like a control group, all those things. So in the same with the same token, I believe that in this case, we need the opinion of more than just one person.
Of course.
Because maybe your friends think you really you're such a great rapper, and whenever you sing a rap song in the party, everybody's enjoying it. But if you actually go to some professionals, they're going to laugh at you, right? So because of this, I'm a huge fan of getting a collective, a huge amount of feedback, which is exactly why I believe you should stay in whatever job you are, so that you have enough time to receive enough feedbacks. Because if you want to discover your talents right now, you won't have enough feedback from the outside world. So you need time. So you got to be out there meeting a lot of people and getting the feedbacks. And only then the pattern emerges. And you realize, oh boy, I've heard this a lot. So this is not about just what your friend thinks or what this guy or what that guy thinks. It is about a collection of feedbacks and comments. So basically the first question is this. What are some of the compliments that I have been repeatedly receiving about some of my aspects, maybe my talents, my skills, something like this? What are some common basically compliments you receive? Because we receive all sorts of compliments about many things.
Right.
But after a while, some pattern basically begins to emerge. And we realize, oh boy, I'm receiving a lot of compliments about this particular skill. People are saying, dude, you really do this very well. So that's when you can actually start going deeper and trying to delve deep inside and understand, maybe I got a really good talent here. So ask yourself, in the past, let's say 10 years, 20 years of your life, what sorts of compliments have you received more than the others from the people around you? That's a great clue. Number 2, this is also very important. What types of people are you the most envious, if not jealous of? Understand this. I am not jealous of the top, let's say, pianist in the world. I am not. Which means I am not going to be the world's top pianist, and I don't care, and I don't want to. But I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people in this world who are truly jealous and envious of the top pianists in the world. I am not jealous of Ronaldo because I don't like soccer, but I'm pretty sure there are so many people who are jealous and envious of Ronaldo.
Friendship over. You don't like soccer?
Let's be honest.
I'm joking.
I mean, let's be honest. I'm not jealous of this guy, but I'm pretty. Maybe you are. I mean, maybe you are jealous of Arsenal's former coach or something, right?
No, I mean, I don't want to be like a player, but then I like the sport. That's what I meant. But
so
joke
what I'm
aside.
saying is, listen, this is true, man, and this really propels us to whole different areas of our lives. Because for me personally, I am not jealous of anyone in the soccer industry, anyone, which means I probably don't have much talent either. Let's be honest. I mean, it's just quite clear, right? But there are people that I am envious of, and there are people that you're envious of,
Hmm.
and there are people that anybody is envious of. And usually that envy is long lasting because we get jealous and envious, just like the compliments. You want to look at the consistent patterns here. Yes, we get jealous of Ronaldo maybe for a couple of seconds because he's got a lot of money, but then you forget about him. But there are certain people that you repeatedly get jealous or envious of. That is another great clue as to what your talent is. If you are finding yourself repeatedly jealous or envious of someone, then you need to look into the life of that person and find out what is about his life that you have to have as well. And usually that person's lifestyle is what you want to have for yourself. So if he's a musician, if he's a politician, if he's a business person, if, I don't know, he's a teacher, it doesn't really matter. You look at that person and you say, dude, I want to be like this guy. This means you have inherent talent that you are failing to use on a habitual basis. And this guy is using it and he's getting results, and that is making you feel jealous and envious on a consistent basis.
Hmm.
So that's the second question, which is very important. And the final question is, as you might have read in a great book, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck,
Right.
is about focusing on what kind of battles you want to go through in life, not just the results. Maybe we all love the idea of being a let's say, millionaire or a billionaire, but the fact of the matter is that many people don't like the battles that most business people and entrepreneurs go through. Because let's
Right.
be honest, if you want to be a billionaire, you cannot take vacations every week. You
Right.
cannot, go have fun for every second counts. This also means your life will probably be very repetitive because you have to do certain things again and again to generate cash and capital. On the other hand, maybe you perhaps would love the battle to be more creative. Maybe you want to have some free time. You want to travel the world and backpack and all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So the third question is this: what kind of battles do I want to go through in life? Not just the results, but the battles. Because sometimes we love the results, but we don't like the battles. And in
True.
that case, we can never, ever excel in that career.
So in this
The
sense,
best careers are the
in,
careers where we love the battle and the results simultaneously.
hmm, in this category, actually, I basically have this mindset that when you think of a career, think of the lifestyle that comes with the career, the goods and like the positives being like, I don't know, some money or whatever it is, and also the hardship that goes through it. So you basically do your research, thoroughly see every aspect of that lifestyle. Does it fit you? Do you want to go through that or not? That's how I basically describe.
I mean, people get jealous of these doctors. Like, dude, these doctors are making millions of dollars per month. I say, dude, they're going to an operating room and they're sticking their hand in the body of another person
Right.
and like and grab that organ. If you like that thing, go do it. But I'm just saying, it's about the battle. I mean, I would not in a million years would want to make money as a doctor because I don't like the idea of just sticking my hand in people's bodies.
Right.
Right.
Not to mention
So
how long it takes for them to be allowed to put their hands in there.
exactly. 15 years of studies to become a specialist. So
Hmm.
ultimately, it's the battle that we want to go through.
Right.
And the battle is what's going to determine what's the right path for us.
True. Very true. Obviously, you mentioned that there are certain, advantages. Some have that, some others don't, and you have something else. Of course, I agree with you on that, and that's true of like a lot of things. For example, from the from the senses that we all have, the inputs. I think one has superior senses in one or two sense, and the inferior in one or the other. So, for example, in hearing, I'm worse at hearing. It doesn't mean that I don't hear well. It's just like if I see something, I notice. If something touches me, I notice very quickly, very articulately. I can differentiate many different senses in those areas. But then in hearing, sometimes people have to repeat a couple of times for me, especially in a crowded room, and while other people are hearing it very well. So, of course, there are differences biologically that sometimes limits us or gives us an edge to do better or worse. I agree with you. Or sometimes, for example, you mentioned the soccer player. If you're a really thin, tiny person, you might not become a good athlete overall, or some sport might be better for you than the others. So I completely agree with you on that end. But
Exactly.
moving forward, there's this idea of switching lanes. What do you think about that? Is there a particular time to switch? Well, you mentioned before you in your 20s, it doesn't really matter. So I'm assuming sometimes switching lanes should be fine. But then, assuming you're well developed in the field that you were working in for a few years or something, and then now you have an idea of, okay, maybe I should switch lane to this particular field for numerous amounts of reasons. Maybe the job that you're doing is going out of fashion, or maybe you think you can make more money there, or that is actually your true calling. Of course, with like anything else, there is the association that you might be actually running away from something rather than seeking something else. So obviously there are those dangers as well. But then I want you to talk about the concept of switching lanes and careers.
You see, in this case, I would like to refer to Gary Vee, one of my mentors, and I love his speeches when he talks to like youngsters, and he says, dude, you're now 22, 23, 25. You could literally be making the worst mistakes for 10 years and you'll be 35 and you'll still be young as fuck. And I really believe in that, because switching lanes, from my perspective, again, I told you, there should not be, I like to have tight deadlines, but ultimately switching lanes should happen when you're ready. The best software developers in the world, they do not give deadlines. They instead say it's going to be ready when it's ready, right? Because they want to focus on the, delivering a good product. So I am not so much concerned on when you should switch lanes, because I have people who've switched lanes in their 40s and 50s who became very successful. I mean, we all know the story of Colonel Sanders, who made KFC at the age of 65, right?
Oh,
so ultimately, it's not about the age. I don't think age is very important. However, there are certain things that, I mean, if you want to look at it from an idealistic point of view, I really believe that your 20s is the time of learning and trying new things. It's not a time to think about money. If you are in your 20s and you're thinking about getting rich, there's something wrong with you. And I promise you, you probably will never be rich.
Right.
20s, the first 10 years of your professional career, right after teenage years, that's the time of experimentation. Now, if you say, great, Dan, I'm going to start traveling the world, having a good time, going to parties, banging chicks, having a good one. I'm telling you, well, maybe that's good for a while, but ultimately you want to, I'm talking from a professional point of view. So you want to dedicate the first, decade in your 20s to focus your attention on learning things. I told you, getting different jobs, getting social feedback, discovering your talent, being busy in society. These are the things. So 20s is the time where you start focus mainly on learning and trying new things. 30s is a time when you start experimenting and trying new things. That's when you perhaps start your new entrepreneurial venture. That's when you start basically trying to come up with some new ideas, or making a new company, or getting into law school, or working as a doctor, whatever it is. The 30s, I called the age of 30s the age of basically building. It's called 20s learning, 30s building, and 40s chilling. So from my perspective, 40s is the real time when you should start thinking about money. Now, here's when money becomes important.
Right.
That's when you want to actually focus on building a great capital, building passive income, all of those things, which should, of course, begin at 30s, because that's when you're building. And then in 40s, then money becomes very important, because now you're gradually approaching basically retirement. So because of this, I don't think there's an exact deadline. So you should not, okay, I'm 29, I still have no clue. So it's not like that. If you start if you're like right now in your teen years, then you're quite lucky. So you can actually dedicate your 20s to learning. And then when you enter 30s, that's when you should focus on actually generating income from work. So money becomes important in 30s. That is, generating income becomes important in 30s, and investment of that income becomes important in 40s. So in your 20s, do not concern yourself with money. There are many startups who will not make any money at the beginning. Right. But if you're in your 20s, you don't care, because you live with your parents, you got a lot of room and board and stuff. So that's the cool thing. Do not think about money in your 20s. Start generating income in your 30s and start investing in your 40s. And this pathway will then allow you to switch lanes along the way, because if you want to, let's say, start making money, then you cannot remain in that job as let's say, a bodyguard or flip burgers in McDonald's. So you're going to have to start changing your career.
Right.
So that's another path as well. However, don't give yourself tight deadlines, because ultimately we all have to discover our path along the way. And it could take some of us a lot longer. Some of us, we could find it a lot earlier.
That's very true. I mean, so I have actually a few examples. As you know, I didn't go to university right after high school, and it took me a few years until I went back. And then a lot of the peers that I had in my first couple of years of school, even now, they were obviously much younger than me, but then they were super obsessed with going through university very quickly, graduating very quickly. And my first question to them was like, why though? Like, what's all the rush? I mean, obviously part of it is that they feel like, okay, this is such a burden. They want to just get rid of it. They don't particularly appreciate it. Either it's a force of, family or society or whatever it is. So they wouldn't do it if they didn't sort of have to, maybe. And also part of it is that they want to get into job market and start making money. And because I had the opposite experience going there first, I was like, dude, like literally there's nothing really out there that you think it's super special, but it's not. But the fact that you make a little bit of money. Of course, I mean, if you were to give them a couple of sentences to these kind of people, what would you say? Besides the things that you just said, of course.
First of all, again, I believe that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So personally, I mean, I myself, I really believe that if you are finding yourself in any task or responsibility, try to do it as well as you can, because the very process of trying to do something well, even if you don't like it, will strengthen your other basically skills, such as discipline, such as willpower, a lot of other great skills. So number one, I'm not saying you should not study. I'm not saying if you go to school or university, you should just drop it right away. However, if you have certain emotional issues and whatnot, no problem. But generally, try to be the best at whatever you're doing, even if you hate it. Basically, Grant Cardone calls it try to master and get good at what you hate. So That's number one. Number two, do not rush it, man. Focus on learning. 20s is for learning. And learning isn't just what happens in universities. Learning is who am I? What am I good at? How can I use that to help other people? And how can I achieve my dreams? These are the questions that you should know by the time you finish your 20s. If you finish your 20s and you still don't know who you are, what you're good at, what you want, and how can you help the people to get what you want in life, then sorry, you've just friggin' wasted your entire 20s. Now, don't worry. It's never too late. I'm an optimist. But the fact of the matter is you have wasted 20s on the things that you had to do, and you simply didn't do it. So start getting busy right away. So ultimately, these are the kind of questions you want to discover along the way during your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And do not don't rush it, because ultimately my experience tells me that you cannot get rich in your 20s unless you come up with some very, very fancy apps like somebody like let's say Zuckerberg or something, or the founder of WhatsApp and whatnot. So generally, you for most of us, for the absolute majority of us, wealth is going to take a long time. The average age of a millionaire in America is 52 years old. So, dude, please just wait. That has a lot of story to it, man. I'm telling you.
So this is the person that became became millionaire. The average rate is 52.
It's the average. That's right. Because it takes at least 12 years. Because we can later talk a lot about finance. Because there are 4 stages to your financial life. It is financial dependence, it is financial stability, it is financial independence, and it is finally financial freedom. And this takes time because it requires capital, and building capital takes time because we exchange our time for capital before we have capital, right? So it's quite normal. It takes at least 8 to 12 to sometimes 20 years to become a millionaire. And that's normal. So you will have the time. Just get busy right now. And quite frankly, I know somebody who became a multimillionaire by being a truck driver and making no more than $14,000 a year his entire life. So there are tricks to becoming a millionaire, even if you are working right now in McDonald's, because ultimately, that's, of course, another topic. We can come back to it later, but because ultimately, becoming a millionaire is about one thing. It's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you save. So you could make $1 million a month and spend $1 million a month. You are poor compared to somebody who makes $100,000 a month, but spends only $10,000. And ultimately, it's not about basically how much money you make at the beginning. So that's a different story altogether. Ultimately, understand that you want to focus on learning and discovering your talents in your 20s. There's a lot of time. So, dude, you're going to be young as fuck in 10 years. So forget about it.
Very true. Very true. So obviously we're coming to the end of our podcast today. Any final comments or thoughts?
Very well. So for all of our listeners out there, if you are in your teens and you have this piece of information, then congratulations. You got the lottery. So know that your 20s is for
Jackpot.
learning. Ignore your parents' things like, oh, you made it up again. You got to go to this school. Forget about your fucking mama or your fucking daddy. It doesn't really matter. Do what they say to have the house, to have the food and whatnot. But then along the way, focus on your talents and discovering themselves. And you're saying, well, but Daniel, I really hate medical school. I really hate this one. Stick with the damn thing, dude or girl, because ultimately the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So commit yourself to doing it well, even if you hate it at first, while simultaneously discovering your talents along the way. If you're in your 20s, then you already know the story. If maybe you're 25, 26, it's not too late, buddy. Focus on learning. You see all these dudes, young dudes who are in Ferraris and whatnot, 99.9% of them are getting that Ferrari from their daddy and whatnot, okay? And the very few people who get rich in their 20s, I've never seen in my entire life a multimillionaire in his 20s who drove fancy cars, had a fancy lifestyle. Think of Zuckerberg. He drives a very simple, shitty car, and he lives a very simple life, and he wears a fucking t-shirt all the time. So the youngsters who are living the life are not living so by themselves. They're just, sucking on their dad's nipples, basically. So don't worry about that one. It's all pretty fine. And in your 30s, now it's time to make money. Dude, look at yourself. Girl, look at yourself. You're growing. You're now an adult. You're in your 30s. It's time to make money. So use what you've learned in your 20s and now focus on cash. Focus on income. What type of career path will allow me to make the maximum amount of income, to make maximum amount of money during my 30s? And now think about generating as much income as possible. That is, find the right career and then work your ass off. Work as hard as you can and make as much money as you can, because 30s is time to generate capital. Because you generate the capital and then you save it. And 40s, of course, if you're in your 40s right now, then understand it's time for investment. So you can't just keep working hard your ass off all the time. You want to start investing. So look for investment options. And by then, if you've already done all these things, you're probably you're living a very good lifestyle, because people who discover what their talents are in their 20s and begin making money in their 30s are usually quite well off in their 40s.
Very well. Very awesome. Thanks for all the talk. I think
It's my pleasure, buddy.
yeah, we covered a lot of good material. Of course, don't think of it as, you're always in competition with yourself, of course, but then life shouldn't be a competition with other people. So as Dan mentioned, first of all, what you see is not necessarily the truth of it. So there's so many things behind the scenes, whether it's the doctor's money that he makes that you don't see the hardship of it, or the guy with the Ferrari who you don't see, perhaps it's dad's Ferrari, maybe. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say, don't compete with others in this particular sense in life. Compete with yourself. Try to make yourself better, I guess, would be the best idea. And of course, as you mentioned, there's no, there's no rush. Take your time, but then don't procrastinate either, of course, which makes sense. All right.
Balance, man, balance. We all love the balance.
Absolutely.
It's all important.
Very
That's
true.
right.
Very true. It always is a double-edged sword. You want to find the middle. Thanks again for being with us, Dan. And,
my pleasure, buddy. Always a pleasure being here with you.
Oh, yeah, same here. Thank you guys for joining us again on another journey, which we took. Let us know if you think of any cool topics that you want to hear about. Let us know if you have any thoughts, concerns, or comments. And go subscribe, rate us, please, and leave us comments if you like. It would be awesome. And until another Let's Talk version, take care of yourself.